listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing better tonight than I was last Friday. I appreciate you holding down the fort for me. No, I'm doing good, man. It's been a good week. Decent Thursday night game, right? Rivalry game between the Niners and Seahawks. But now I'm looking forward to a really, really good slate of college football on Saturday, and okay slate of NFL games. I'm not necessarily blown away by the matchups overall, but I definitely think that there's a couple games that are at least put in position to kind of knock our socks off and provide a lot of fantasy value. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think that that'll be a good one. And I'm sure all the viewers are very glad to have you back there as well, right? Like we were talking about this before the show. I had my worst rankings week I think that I've had in a while this past week. And so anybody that got led astray on that one, my apologies to kind of start the show, right? Like just take that accountability right off the top there. So had pretty good weeks, right? In doing the in doing those rankings, and this last week certainly caught me. So that's all right. We'll be better going forward. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think there's going to be a lot of really good, fun games coming up here, and I know that I'll be kind of glued to my set tomorrow afternoon. Certainly watching some games there. Certainly some good rivalry games coming up this weekend in the college football that I am very excited to see how that turns out here. So
I'll be a big time Boomer fan on Saturday, buddy.
well, you and me both. But my
I'll be rooting for you.
Yep. All righty. So and guys, as we're kind of chatting in and all of that, if you have questions, comments, fantasy start sits, trade offers, whatever, just throw them in the chat. Let's go ahead and chat about those and get those things rocking and rolling for y'all as we get ready to go into the fantasy football weekly huddle. It's the Bet Set Snap Week 6 edition under the Friday night or the Friday fantasy football lights. There we go. That was a mouthful. Chandler over on YouTube has a question for us. Start Singletary or Romeo Doubs. It is PPR in a flex position.
I'm going to start Romeo Doubs. The Singletary injury plus the success that Tyrone Tracy had last week leads me to believe that if nothing else, Tracy's going to see a little bit more volume. Singletary really hasn't gotten it done for you this year. I know Doubs hasn't necessarily lit the world on fire, but with Christian Watson nursing an injury, I think Doubs kind of had to humble himself a little bit after the shenanigans that caused him to be put on the suspension list, right, by the team of conduct unbecoming. I think he's come out to prove something here. So I like Doubs this week as a flex play.
Yeah, I would concur with that one. Right, Singletary, you still listed as questionable coming into this game here. Romeo Doubs is not. I'm going to play the guy that is healthy, and I think you're right. I think we're going to see something where he's got a little something to prove, little something to kind of show out here. And so I like the Romeo Doubs play as well. So great question, Chandler. Again, guys, if you have questions, comments, let's go ahead and throw those in the chat. Let's go ahead and get those rocking and rolling there. And so, Chandler saying the coach at the Giants is the same one he had when he was with the Texans, said he thinks, said he loves him. Think Tracy actually takes more snaps. I think Tracy has certainly earned a share of that backfield after what we saw.
Yeah, and he'd been seeing snaps, right? Like he wasn't coming off cold like they brought him up from the practice squad. He had been seeing snaps, and he played really well last week. Like I mean, this is a what have you done for me lately type league, and I get it that they were together, Singletary and his coach were together in Houston, but everything changes. I mean, and it changes quickly. Look at Austin Eckler. He went from number one, top 3 overall fantasy pick to, absolute bum last year. And then this year you were able to pick him up in the 6th, 7th, 8th round. So things happen in a flash, and Singletary ultimately hasn't getting it done. Like his yards per carry is terrible. He's not busting plays. Tracy had 3 explosive plays out of the run game last week for the Giants, and this is the first time that they've had 3 explosive plays out of the run game since like week 13 of last year, I think, when Saquon did it. So they've been few and far to come by, but you need a solid running game for Daniel Jones. Otherwise, the offensive line doesn't hold up by the end of the game. So I think he gets something. But maybe it's not all of it. Maybe it's not even 50-50, but everything that he gets isn't going to Singletary. And at the start of the season where we kind of felt like Singletary would see, 80% of the backfield touches. Now I think we're trickling down closer to maybe, 65, 60% if they're both healthy. And Tracy has all the explosions. So it's only a matter of time before he kind of ends up taking over.
Right. And there is something to that, right? When you're talking about some of these coaches that and the players and the coaches were together at certain stops, things like that. Sometimes it works out great, sometimes it doesn't, right? Like, yeah, we could look at Curtis Samuel in Buffalo, right? Like, where's Curtis Samuel at? This is the same coach, same offensive coordinator he had when he was in with Carolina, and had his best fantasy season ever, right? Like, same thing. Aaron Rodgers has the same coach that he had back in Green Bay when he was lighting the world on fire the last couple of years that he was there, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily always kind of pan out. So it's one of those that I get the thought process and how people do that, but it doesn't necessarily always equate the same. So, but really good question there. Master Vader over on YouTube. Ayuk and DK burned me like smashing well, he got burned. So, fair enough. Anyway, that is a rough spot there. And, hopefully you've got something that you can turn up here for Sunday. Mr. Wumbo over on,
and hold on, DK had a long touchdown.
right.
They there's an illegal shift on the far side of the play that didn't amount to anything. Now it was flag worthy. It was a penalty, but DK had his long touchdown, and it would have saved the day for him. It was just unfortunate. Illegal shift brought it back, so it not all DK's fault.
Right. Mr. Wumbo wondering what is up with Pittman. 8 targets and a TD. He's good, feeling great, and is fine. He might be banged up. He's doubtful for Sunday. He might miss 2 weeks. He's going on IR. Full practice might start. That is about the roller coaster ride that everybody that has Michael Pittman on their fantasy roster has dealt with all week. You are right. And the latest reports that I'm seeing is that if he can manage the pain, he's going to be out there and go. Right. It's almost kind of the opposite that we saw with kind of Nico, where it was day to day, week to week, IR, right? Like, there's kind of the opposite trend going there. But thoughts on this one?
You gotta trust that if you're put in a position where you got to play him, right, with bye weeks and everything else, then you're gonna play him. It has been crazy, right? The back issue is what it is. So it's a pain tolerance thing. We haven't really seen Pittman get dinged up before, so we're gonna see how he's able to grit through it. I mean, maybe he gets a shot before the game to kind of numb it up. Maybe he doesn't. Who knows? That's between him and the doctors. But full practice on a Friday is promising. So unless he wakes up Sunday morning for walkthrough stiff as a board and feels like he just can't go, I think he's going to be out there. And if he's out there, most likely you don't have a better option than Pittman.
I like it. Alex over on YouTube got offered Bijan and Wicks for Monty and Higgins. Should I accept it? They have Saquon and Walker still PPR. I like the Monty and Higgins side more. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I don't mind it, especially since Monty's past the bye week now, right? So he's going to be there. He's going to be involved there in Detroit. T. Higgins, it's clear that the Bengals are going to have to just chuck it around the yard to remain in these games because their defense hasn't been able to stop anybody. So you're not going to see the Bengals in too many low-scoring games. And if you do, it's most likely going to come at a loss. They know that they got to air it out here to keep up on the scoreboard because, again, their defense just is not holding up their end of the bargain at this moment. That being said, I am a really large proponent of getting the best player. If you're going to start doing this, especially if things are offered to you, and just kind of understanding what things look like to have the best player in the deal, Bijan's still the best player in the deal. Now, the shoulder issue has me a little worried, so maybe you do. If you feel like that's not going to go away and he's going to be giving up goal line work to Algier, I mean, maybe you do pivot off of that, especially if you need help at receiver, right? I guess ultimately that's what it is. Do you need Higgins? Because if you need Higgins, then Monty's not bad. Like, I mean, Wicks, whatever. Like, Wicks is going to pop 1 or 2 weeks, and fantasy owners are going to be chasing points on him. Most of the time, you're not going to start him during those peak weeks. So it's Bijan for Monty and Higgins is how I truly look at it. Wicks really isn't going to be touching my lineup unless I'm decimated with injuries. So Monty and Higgins for Bijan, I'd tell you is extremely fair.
Yeah, I can get I understand the principle of the deal and all of that, but when I'm looking at that, right, like so far throughout the season, even with David Montgomery having a bye week, has still outperformed Bijan Robinson on the season. T. Higgins, by far and away the better side of that for Wicks, and so at this point, when I'm doing that, I'm looking at an RB3 for the roster there, and at that point with RB3 status, I want the very, very consistent 15, 16 points a game that Monty's going to get me on this one. Whereas Bijan could certainly pop and deliver me 20, but he can also go out there and he's going to get me 8 or 10 on any given week too, right? Like there's a lot more up there. And on that third type of running back or that flex play, I want a little bit more of a floor play. It's kind of how I'm seeing it.
So consensus rankings, right? Just what the general fantasy football community feels like. Bijan is the 5th running back in regards to rest of season rankings for running backs, and his playoff strength of schedule is primo, right? Like he's the guy that you're going to want in the playoffs. Jahmyr Gibbs is 6th, so take this into account. A Detroit running back, and then David Montgomery 17th. So clearly the Detroit running backs have a very similar setup. So if it's good for Gibbs, it's good for Monty type thing. So the two are pretty close, right? As far as rest of season goes. And then again, with the Higgins piece, they have a little bit of a harder schedule, but still, I mean, Jamar Chase is number 2. I think largely that's just raw talent from Chase. But if you go looking at T. Higgins, it's 26th. But again, if you need the wide receiver, you need to go the Higgins side. But if you don't need Higgins at all, then I'd say go for the upside of Bijan. Eventually, that talent will continue to come through. It is a new team, new offensive coordinator. They're still getting used to things. We're seeing Drake London had a monster game last week. We're going to see how they follow that back up. Kyle Pitts even made an appearance. Like things are getting going. And as the passing game gets going, especially with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney's having a great year, right? As the passing game's continuing to work, those safeties aren't going to be able to creep up on Bijan, which will make it easier for him to get some chunk plays as the season goes on.
Fair enough. 7 Smiles over on YouTube saying, sup guys, Sermon or Bucky Irving this week if Rachaad White also misses?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one.
I think I want Bucky in this instance. because Trey Sermon is still going to be splitting with Goodman. Is it Tyler Goodman?
Believe that's the name.
So Trey is still going to be splitting with Goodman. I believe that's his name. I'm going to double check while I'm talking about this, just in case I'm mispronouncing it. But regardless, if Rashad White doesn't go, I want Bucky because he will have dominant dominant timeshare and probably touch opportunity there in that backfield.
Right. And you'll know because
Goodson, excuse me.
Yes.
Tyler Goodson.
Yes, that's correct. And you should know here too, right? Because the Tampa Bay plays in that early window, so you'll know about 90 minutes before kickoff whether or not Rashad White's a go.
So the Colts. Yeah, Colts do as well. They both play the early game.
Yeah, so it's one of those that if Rashad White's out, you can certainly make that pivot and rock and roll there. And Seven Smiles saying PPR. Does that change any thoughts there? It doesn't for me.
No, I think Bucky will see some.
Yeah. So, and then Andrew over on YouTube, Tyreek for DK and Swift. It's a 10-person PPR. They are desperate at running back.
I don't mind this because you're getting a high quality receiver in return also, right? They're definitely selling Swift high, I think, the last couple weeks, but part of this is, I think Chicago's offense is kind of coming along here a little bit. The offensive line's been holding up pretty well. Caleb Williams has been able to look like the first overall pick here the last couple weeks, which is a good thing. So I don't despise this, especially if you say you're desperate at running back. I don't despise this. DK and Swift together, presumably two guys that you'll stay your plug right into your starting lineup, is acceptable, especially with the unknown about Tua. I was hoping we'd hear a little bit of news, but with it being the bye week, the Dolphins are being really coy about what's going on here. So, understandably so. But I think that's fair for the situation at hand. I think that's fair. They're banking on Tua coming back. You need a running back. You get DK in return, who, didn't get the touchdown this last week. A little disappointing, but you don't have to sit on that on your roster. And then be able to have DK the rest of the season. I'm not opposed to that. So DK, again, rest of season rankings. DK's 12th, Tyreek's 13th consensus rankings for rest of season. So they're right there, and you get Swift on top of it. I don't think that's a bad deal for you, Andrew.
Yeah. And DK certainly has a hard strength of schedule for the rest of the, fantasy season there. Playoffs does get a little bit better there, but yeah, I think I'm right there with you that I'd probably do that deal and take the DK and Swift, especially if you've got the running back need there. Chandler asking, is Bijan a sell candidate if he pops off this week?
I don't think so. I mean, everybody's a potential sell candidate depending on the price, right? But if Bijan pops this week and you look to flip him, you better be getting like ample talent in return. So, whether it's a RB2 and bottom low end wide receiver 1 type player, I mean, maybe. I mean, is Kenneth Walker and Jaden Reed's probably an overpay. What about James Conner? What about James Conner and Jaden Reed for Bijan?
Yeah.
I don't hate that. Like, I think that's suitable. If Bijan pops, maybe poke at the Nico Collins owner and seeing what that looks like. If he's willing to give up Nico for Bijan, and see if you guys can work a secondary piece in there, so that way he has a wide receiver that he can plug in, and you can have a running back to plug in back for Bijan. I mean, there's a couple different possibilities, so it's possible. I don't know that I would do it, um, unless I was really, really hurting at another position. I think I would take that pop week as more of a sign of, okay, they're getting things figured out.
Yeah. And there's a good point to that as well, right? Like Atlanta's offense the last couple of weeks has been super pass heavy and to almost an unsustainable rate. Like I think we're going to see that kind of shift back here a little bit when we start seeing a little bit more of a balanced attack where instead of Kirk Cousins dropping back 70% of the plays, maybe it returns more around the 60 to 55 to 65% of range. And I think that certainly helps out with that as well. So alrighty. And then Tingley over on YouTube saying, hey, start Brian Thomas Jr. or Christian Kirk against the Bears defense.
Bears pass defense is pretty stinking stingy. So
Yes.
with that being the case, and if Evan Ingram comes back, I think him and Kirk could potentially this first week kind of bump into each other a little bit. So I think I'd take the shot on the big play with Brian Thomas Jr. He gives you the most. He gives you the most upside. Kirk probably has a safer floor, but so I think it just depends on what you feel like your roster needs. Thomas for the upside, Kirk for the floor, and you wake up at 9:30 Eastern to check out the London game and see how it shakes out for you.
Right. Tingley then asking flex PPR Wicks, Leggett, or Tracy if Singletary's out.
Tracy, and it's not even close for me.
Does that change if Singletary's in?
Yeah, if Singletary's in, I would probably pivot to Wicks. With him being the third option, generally his matchup will probably be a little bit better, a little bit more friendly for him. So it does change if Singletary plays.
Okay, and I think I'd agree and be pretty close to that as well. Yeah, I think that's how I roll as well. So very cool. Let's go ahead and hit up Andrew over on YouTube saying that replying to Tingley saying that both of those would be good options, but they would pick Brian Thomas Jr. as well. Alrighty. Andrew over on YouTube saying the RBs are White from Tampa Bay, Brown from Cincinnati, Dwaddle, Barkley. I'm not sure what that one was for.
It's
that was back to the
Bijan. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. The Tyreek for DK and Swift. So the running backs are White, Brown, Waddle, and Barkley. It's a 10-person league though, and the wide receivers are Stacks, saying that he literally just has Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb.
Jeez. Yeah, I don't have a problem with. So it's either Bijan and Barkley. I think if that's the case, no, Tyreek. Sorry, I keep getting this confused. So it's getting Swift to add to a running back room. That's a little thing. I think that's probably the best play for you then. You have Jefferson and Lamb. I think I do that. Rachaad White has not been nearly as consistent and seeing the volume that he saw last year. Swift seems to be finding his role. I do think Chase Brown's kind of up and coming, so that's a fun guy to kind of have on your roster, and I think he'll pay dividends by the time the season's over. But going back to that trade, I think with this being the case, I think I'd go ahead and make that trade. I mean, unless you feel like you can find something better, right? And that's ultimately what it is. If you feel like you can find something better, poke around, see if you can find it. If not, then so be it.
I like it. Mr. Wumbo over on YouTube saying desperate at running back, and you've got Barkley, Dwaddle, Brown, and White. I don't know the word that I'd have to use to describe my running back situations in a few leagues. So fair enough. It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? So I like that one though.
Well, Chase Brown has
he's
toe
questionable.
or ankle. He's questionable.
White is very questionable.
White is more doubtful than questionable. I get it. You don't want to put your faith in Dowdle. I'm like I said, I'm okay with it. I understand why you feel like you're in this position with White being a disappointment for you, and you're constantly crossing your fingers on Brown and Dwaddle. So you put Swift in there, he falls right into an RB2 with stacked wide receivers, and I think you're okay.
I like it. Pavon over on YouTube. What up? What's up, fam? Got a PPR, Coleman or Wicks. Thoughts?
I'm going Wicks this week. The Jets defense is not their problem. Like, it's just not. And they're talking about how they want to run the ball more, which is great for Brees Hall owners. So they're going to take the air out of the ball a little bit, which means fewer opportunities for Josh Allen. I'm going Wicks.
Okay. And then he came down here and said too that he also has Kincaid at tight end. So wondering if they want to start two Bills versus the Jets. No, I wouldn't. So that solidifies it for me as well. And I'd also go with Wicks on that one too. All righty. Jakins over on YouTube, Bucky or Slayton in the flex. White misses. It's a pretty easy smash Bucky.
Man, Darius Slayton was really interesting last week. I wonder if we would be chasing the points.
That's where I'm at with that one.
Now,
it feels like a point chase.
I feel like this Giants game could give us more shootout potential, right? Again, Cincinnati's defense is not
Yes.
good. So they are going to keep throwing the ball and putting pressure. Thibodeau.
Mhm.
He's not playing, so Burrow's going to have a hair more time. So if Burrow in that offense, go out and they start putting up close to, 30, 35 points, Daniel Jones isn't going to have any opportunity or any chance but to air it out, right? He's going to have to do that. And then you get into the upside of Slayton because he's a big play guy. So I like the upside of Darius Slayton in a game that I think could be really high scoring for us. So I think it kind of goes back to floor or ceiling. I think Bucky gives you a better floor because Darius Slayton could easily go 2 for 20 and that's it. But if you need the pop play, like you feel like you're going to be chasing your opponent a little bit, it's going to be a race to 150, then I think Slayton's your guy to give you the most pop.
Okay, I like it. Mr. Wumbo wondering how that they were able to pull that off. That goes back to that roster that Andrew submitted. And Andrew was saying that they traded away Josh Allen and now the Corby's Caleb Williams. The bench is pretty cooked though, and that they've made 20 trades throughout the season. That's a trader right there. I like it.
It's impressive. I enjoy leagues like that. From time to time. Our home league is really stingy on it. Like our home league guys do not love to trade, and there's a couple who try, but then there's others that you just get like no response out of them whatsoever. Like you wonder if they even set their roster.
There are some, yes. Champagne over on YouTube asking to start McConkey, Downs, or Pickens this week and rest of season.
I think with those three guys, you're constantly going to be playing some matchups. I don't know that Pickens' value necessarily changes between Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Like I think he's basically the same guy. Maybe you see a couple more targets out of Wilson, but you'll see more deep shots out of Justin Fields. So I think it balances itself out at the end of the day on that side. Josh Downs is probably the last guy on my list just because Anthony Richardson scares me as a passer. He really does. Like we've seen Downs pop, we've seen Alec Pierce pop. We saw Pittman have a good game, like looked like he was bouncing back, and that was with Flacco, for the most part. So I like Downs the player. I just don't know that I like the situation. I don't think Richardson, once he comes back, is going to truly be able to support 3 receivers. McConkey might be the safest floor of all of them because he plays so much out of the slot and he's willing to kind of do that dirty work for you. So I think this week, right? Going back to the first question. So this week, I'm going to stay away from McConkey. Denver's defense has been really good this year and have really turned things around since they gave up 70 to the Miami Dolphins a year ago. So I am going to fade. I am going to fade that one. So Steelers against the Raiders, I think Pickens offers a really nice upside. That's probably where I'm going this week against the Raiders. It's the weakest defense out of who those 3 players are going up against. And really, Justin Fields might be the quarterback with the most to prove because now that Russell Wilson's healthy and kind of nipping at his heels a little bit, Fields is not necessarily fighting for his job. Like he's the starter until he's not, but he's got to earn it every day. And part of earning it is finding your playmaker so that way he's happy. And for that reason, I'm going to give Pickens the lean this week. I think season long, it might be Pickens by a hair over McConkey, and Downs is third on both accounts.
Yeah. Well, this week I would rate for this week and starting that I would go Pickens down to McConkey on that one. Rest of the season though, I would have it same as you: Pickens, McConkey, Downs. Again, like if Joe Flacco is a quarterback, that certainly changes where I'm viewing Downs at, right? Like that certainly moves him way up on that one. But the Anthony Richards side of things, no, thank you. I want to see a quarterback that can complete even close to 60% of their passes before I really start buying into the secondary or the tertiary option for a pass catcher on that roster. So. Alrighty. And then, this is funny. Mr. Wumbo was saying that playing a new team every week, going back to that 20 trade comment there. Yep. So
listen, there's certain players that they get a kick out of it. Terry's like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a couple of guys who turn in a lot, who've done a lot of traits. Like their league mates are into it, they're into it. You got to find a partner, but kudos to them. They find the partner and play around with it, and it seems to work out for them. So,
right. Yeah, I like it. Binkin over on YouTube saying, "Sup, fellas? Not much. We're under them Friday night fantasy football lights." Terrence over on YouTube, would trading Purdy for a skill guy and picking up Tua be a move? Burrow's the starter.
sure.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have any heartache about that. You're going with Burrow's upside 95% of the time over what Purdy's doing, and that's okay. Like the only difference I think that could potentially swing that the other way around is if we were guaranteed McCaffrey was coming back middle of November. Like I think that might change my tune just slightly, but I think as constructed, again, Cincinnati's defense is so bad that they need Joe Burrow's right arm. So as long as he's upright and going, you're most in again 95% of occasions you're playing him over Purdy anyway, just for the upside. So I have no problem with this.
Right, I like it. Terrence asking Javonte Williams or Gibson this week. I'm assuming that's Antonio Gibson, not the Gibson the way that's spelled off of the Jets.
If it's Antonio, I'm playing him this week because Ramondre is likely out.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's the other one, it's easily Javonte.
Yeah.
Terrence saying Ertz or Ferguson this week.
Fergie. Give me Fergie. I love the pieces to this Detroit-Dallas game. I really do. Give me Fergie. Baltimore's been pretty decent against the tight end. And I mean, they played Dallas extremely well. They played Buffalo extremely well. Um, Kansas City, they shut down Travis Kelce. Like, I mean, they've Baltimore's just shutting down the tight end here. So I'm going Ferguson in the high scoring game. Both could end up being high scoring. I think the Commanders more so garbage time than anything else potentially. But I think the Dallas Detroit game could just blow past 50 points naturally, just back and forth affair. So give me Fergie.
Agreed, right? Like I think Jake Ferguson very well could be like. It honestly wouldn't surprise me. Now granted, George Kittle had a night last night, but wouldn't surprise me if we look up and see Jake Ferguson finishes tight end number 2 on the week, right? Like the 2 touchdown performance from Kittle certainly makes that a little tough to kind of overcome and get up there in the point where we might see 18, 20 points out of Jake Ferguson, but I think there's a real strong case that we can see him get to 13, 14 points this week. So whereas Zach Ertz is your pretty reliable guy to go out there and get you 3 or 4 catches for 30 to 40 yards. And so it's a floor play. Ferguson, though, definitely has a little pop this week, and I think he's got a safer and higher floor than Ertz does as well. Alrighty, and then Terrence saying, looking at the matchups this week, are you starting Amari Cooper over either JMO or Brian Thomas Jr.? I'll say no.
No, if anything, I would. If anything, it'd be Brian Thomas Jr. Again, I want every piece of this Detroit-Dallas game I can kind of get my hands on. So if I am looking to make that decision, I would play it over Brian Thomas Jr. just because that Bears defense is pretty stout, especially in the secondary. But generally, no. I mean, again, Thomas Jr. gives you a bit more upside than what Amari is going to give you at Philly, mainly because Deshaun Watson's been so damn bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, JMO would be a pretty easy start for me in that one. I could honestly coin flip it between Brian Thomas Jr. and Amari Cooper, but that is just simply because of the matchups each of them are going with. But honestly, with the way that we've seen Deshaun look and we've seen this Cleveland offense look, I'd actually probably lean to Thomas Jr. So Amari Cooper would be the third on my list on that one. Mr. Wumbo saying 2 for 20. Those are Marvin Harrison Jr. numbers. Not sure. Yep. Alrighty. Terrence saying that they roster Kyron Williams, traded Mostert and the Texans defense away for Gibson. And it is the Antonio Gibson that we got some clarification on that one. To make room and pick up Blake Corum, who was dropped to waivers this week.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I get it. Like, it's okay. Handcuff your horse. Like, I'm not opposed to that. I've done that in a couple different leagues. So,
all right. Let's go ahead and hit up this one. Alexander over on YouTube saying Wan'Dale, Olave, and Garrett Wilson. Which 2 do they start?
I'm starting Wan'Dale and Garrett Wilson this week. There's a lot of unknown for Spencer Rattler, who's going to be making his first NFL start this week for the New Orleans Saints. And I'm not saying he can't feed Chris Olave. I'm simply saying I want to see it. And for the Giants, we know Malik Neighbors is out, so I think that leads towards a higher target share for Wan'Dale this week. And Garrett Wilson, we saw what he did last week. Let's see if lightning can strike twice. And him and Rodgers have kind of worked out this connection piece. So for this week, Olave is going to be my odd man out.
Yeah, and as much as I want to go with the Olave, and it's really close between Wan'Dale and Olave for me, right? Like it is it is much closer than I would have initially kind of thought going into this one. But for me, it's a smash on Garrett Wilson. Go ahead and start that one there, right? With the Wandale side of things, I think I do give him the edge on that one because at worst case scenario, I think we're going to see Wandale get 10 targets in this game, right? Probably 9-10 targets in this one. I think Olave, we might see 6 or 7 type of targets. Now, again, right, like 6 or 7 targets. Yeah, is that are they Anthony Richardson type of targets, right? Like that we don't know and what that's going to look like to the point where they're, they may still have some good targets there, but they may not necessarily be catchable balls. So I think Olave still has the higher ceiling when it's all said and done, but I really like the floor that Wandale would provide there. So I think I'm right there with you. I think I'd probably lean that way. Alrighty. And then Mr. Wumbo saying that there's a few specific people in their leagues that he knows that they can work with. Some people that just reject everything and never counter offer, so rarely even look at their offers. Right? Happens in the trading game. Or the teams that he tries to make a trade with, and I'm like, they have no tight end. How about Ayuk and Bowers for Tyreek? And I get a counter offer of DeAndre Hopkins on his bench for Bowers. Yep, that sounds like fantasy trading there.
Yeah, it's just that's why you got to find the partner, and sometimes so it makes it easier in leagues where you know people, and harder to some extent. When you know them, you can shoot them a trade and even if they do something stupid, you can shoot them a text message off of, right? And go, all right, come on. Like, are we even willing here, or is it just something that you don't want to entertain anything? And if they're not willing to entertain it, they're not willing to entertain it, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. The counter kind of tells you that they don't want to entertain it, and you move on. And some people are just scared to trade.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't understand it. They don't know how to get compensation. I will tell you that there are a number of people in our home league who are willing to trade with anybody besides Derek and I. Like they just are. They feel like no matter what, Derek and I are trying to get one up on them, know something that they don't, feel like if I'm looking for that guy and trying to give up this guy or these guys, that we're just setting them up to fail. And sometimes it's difficult, and so it doesn't always work out. And there's other times, right? Derek and I look at each other's rosters up and down, like, okay, well, what if we do this, and what if we do this, and what if we do this? And by the time we're kind of done wanting to balance the deck, it's like a 5-for-5 trade or something crazy like that. And then we go, no, this is dumb. We're not doing this.
Right.
Like at that point, you're just horse trading. So
right.
It's hard. League constructs, rules, roster constructions, like all these things is one of those things. Like this year, Derek and I, look at each other's rosters. Well, our strengths are kind of in the same spot. Our depth, maybe our depth is in the same spot, right? We both have a ton of running backs this year, and we went high end wide receiver. Well, Derek's high end wide receivers got dinged up, right? Puka and Rashee Rice are on IR. I had Cooper Kupp on IR. And we both have kind of this plethora of running backs in a league that are fantasy partners, teammates, whatever, competitors. They desperately need running backs, but they refuse to give up a wide receiver for it. It's like, dude, you are getting in a league where we score 400 to 450 points on average. You're getting a combined 35 points out of your wide receiver, out of your running back room. So I'm like, hey, here's, Zach Moss and Najee Harris that are sitting on my bench. They're sitting on my bench. I don't really have a need for them, but they're good depth pieces in case my guys get hurt. Here are these two guys for DK Metcalf. Like, I'm overpaying for DK, especially in how our league scores, but nope, he's my best player. Your best player has you sitting at 1-5, 1-4. Like, your best player is not doing squat for you. Like, why don't I give you two players that you'll both plug into your starting lineup right away? and I'm looking for a piece to start in to be able to plug into mine right away.
Right.
Like it just sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I feel you, but we deal with it too. That's all I can tell you is we deal with it too.
And there's some of that too, right? Like I think you probably hit the nail on the head there when you're talking about, right, like looking for compensation and trying to understand that sometimes the the loss of the key player type of thing, or they're losing the higher end talent there, but they're gaining more in the aggregate of what could be easily startable pieces week in, week out for the roster, and ultimately improve the roster. Like there is certainly some of that, but I think Mr. Wumba also makes a good point there that a lot of people when they try and do trades, they're looking to try and win the trade more so than right than just trying to make a good trade that quite frankly benefits their roster, right? Like it doesn't have to be that you got one over on somebody or something like that, but if you simply just make deals that are beneficial to both parties, right? Like that's how you also get people that are willing to trade in the future too, right? Like a lot of times you'll see these leagues where people will trade, all of a sudden you get the that one trade that goes sideways, or somebody did a you know did a massive overpay, and now all of a sudden people start not trading as much. So certainly all goes into some of that. So I do like Alexander's comment saying that Mr. Wumbo offer of DeAndre Hopkins for Bowers is a good trade option.
Oh, he's talking about the Ayuk and Bowers for Tyreek piece.
I think it's this one here, because then Mr. Wumbo said that Hopkins has 10 catches for 100 yards the whole year, and Bowers did that last week. So I do love our
I guess
comment.
I read his comment the other way around. Like Ayuk and Bowers was a good trade for Tyreek.
Yeah, that one was
not the counter offer, and I think that's fair. Ayuk and Bowers for Tyreek. I again, there's more risk on the Tyreek side, but it's not like Brandon Ayuk's been lighting the world on fire. He got paid and then disappeared.
Yes. Oh, the old guy. Don't draft the guy that just signed a big contract. Shades over on YouTube asking Dobbins or Dwaddle, and it is standard.
Dobbins or Dwaddle in a standard. I'm going Dwaddle because in standard leagues, give me the game with the higher point total, because generally that means more opportunities for touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it get you if Dobbins runs for this is the problem with standard leagues. Dobbins runs for 86 yards. It's 8.6 points. Dwaddle runs for 26 yards and falls in the end zone. It's the exact same thing, right? Like there's no benefit to receiving. Now, neither one of them are big receiving backs, so who gives, right? Who cares? And then it goes up to strength of opponent and game totals and kind of looking at some of that. Dobbins is going to have a bigger workload. They want to run the ball, and they're going to try and set the precedent on the ground, right? So Dobbins definitely has the higher floor, but the game total tells me that Dwaddle has the touchdown upside because that game's a 52-point total or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you, right? And kind of the way that I start looking at standard leagues is more of touchdown leagues, right? And that's where I make my decisions, is who's going to get the touchdowns. And in order to get touchdowns, there have to be opportunities for touchdowns, and typically more points means more opportunities there. So I'm right there with you. Timbo over on YouTube, Slayton or Pickens full PPR this week only. Thanks. Slayton or Pickens? It's a good one.
I think I go Pickens by a hair. I am not going to run anybody off if they want to counter me and say Slayton's the pick and they feel really convicted about it. But I think this week both are in pretty favorable matchups. I still want given the choice, I want the alpha. I'd tell you the Pickens is the clear alpha in Pittsburgh. Slayton could be. It could also be Wandell Robinson. It could be Tyrone Tracy. Like, I mean, or we could see Danny Dimes come crashing back down to earth. Like, I mean, there's just a lot more risk on the Slayton side. So for me, I'd play Pickens.
I like it. Binkin saying, who's going to be the Sunday morning streamer for DFS? I guess on that one, Binkin, is it actual DFS or is that defense special teams? So a little bit of questions there. So let us know on that one, and we can circle back around to that one. Austin over on YouTube, would you go Pittsburgh or the Eagles defense this week?
Flip a coin. I like them both.
Fair enough.
I would tell you, I would slight my bias towards Pittsburgh only because I feel like they do a better job sacking the quarterback. So if if you're getting points for a sack, I would tell you Pittsburgh in that reference. Going up against Aiden O'Connell, like first start of the season, okay. But you have the Eagles coming off a bye week, knowing that they need to make a run. They finally have their offense back in full force. So Pittsburgh, if you're gonna make a call, I'd tell you Pittsburgh 1, Philadelphia 2.
Yeah, I'd lean Pittsburgh on this one, and I've got them by maybe about half of a point. So, but I like it. Mr. Wumbo saying that know a few people that are pointing to the interview of Rattler saying Olave is built different and he's going to get him the ball, but like, what else is he supposed to say? He could just take the political answer and say that he's there to run the offense and that we're gonna distribute the ball and we're gonna take what the defense gives us and just try and put up points where we can get them. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that one?
No.
Mr. One was saying if they're willing to accept a trade, it must be a bad trade decline. Okay. Cat for Life over on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, 14 PPR league. Gibson from the Pats, Mitchell from the Colts, Schultz, Texans. Thoughts on Vidal? They've got JK. Got the flex spot.
Flex spot, Gibson.
Yes. And it's not close.
Yeah, I think it gives you the best overall opportunity there with Gibson. Again, first start from Drake May. Figure he's going to be checking it down a little bit. I think that puts Gibson in a really prime position, being a former wide receiver. We know he catches the ball out of the backfield. Like I think Gibson could have a really good day, even if Ramondre plays, just because of what he's going to try and see and digest and get through for the first time, right? We saw it out of all of these rookie quarterbacks so far. Their first start was not necessarily ideal. A lot of checkdowns, a lot of quick releases. That plays right into Antonio Gibson. So I think that's going to be a very solid play for you this week.
Absolutely. Cat for Life asking, what are we doing with Devontae Adams?
Sitting on him till I know where they're trading him.
Yep.
At the moment, it's a hamstring injury, right? It's no different than someone who's been on IR. So you're dealing with an injured player right now. At the end of the day, and all the talks about the trade and everything else, I'm waiting to see if they deal him. And if they do, where? Because his value could go from, he's feeling like a bum on your bench right now to being fantasy gold here for, the back half of the regular season. So I'm absolutely sitting on it.
Right. Mr. Wumbo saying that they've got a league with a guy that's 3-2, which is fine, but has Kamara, Barkley, Mixon, Cook, Bigsby, Bucky, and it's like, bro, you can only start 3 of them. Please trade them.
But Mixon's been hurt, so he's been having to start Bigsby or Bucky, right? Bigsby's had the hot hand, so maybe put that in, but now Bucky's going to see the lion's share. Like, this is why carrying, 5 isn't a bad idea.
Right. Well,
It's a position of power for them. And it is because, again, eventually, if they lose a receiver, they'll be forced to go out into the trade market and try and get a receiver from somebody, and they're going to be called on to part with one of those running backs.
right. And I mean, you look at it too, right out of that deal there. Mixon has missed several games so far this week. Kamara's been banged up on and off the injury report list. Hasn't really missed any time there, but week in, week out, it seems to be there's something else that's popping up on the injury report for him. And James Cook is missed practice today with the foot toe thing. So certainly some potential concerns there. Bigsby, okay, like that was a waiver wire pickup here recently, and Bucky still playing second fiddle back there, right? So I get it though. I get where you're coming from. Quincy over on YouTube, need to drop one. League has only allows to carry 5 wide receivers. Cup is coming off IR. The wide receiver room is Lamb, Debo, Cup, Juju, Mooney, Tank Dell. No one wants to trade.
You're dropping Juju.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know that there's too much to expand on that one, but
no, for me, that one's not even close. Like, you're dropping Juju. He had one good week. You're not going to play him with those other wide receivers in front of him. So I would not worry about that. When Cup comes back, you drop Juju.
Right. I mean, you look at that. While Juju may lead the Chiefs rest of season with wide receiver targets on the Kansas City Chiefs team, it's going to be at best the second target on that one, right? Like, it will very clearly be Travis Kelce, and we've seen that with Rashee Rice going down, that all of a sudden we've seen the step forward in Kelce. And Juju, I think you're going to get back into what we've seen traditionally out of Juju with the Chiefs. If you're lucky, 4, maybe 5 targets a game. Mooney is the second target in Atlanta, has been getting a lot more than that. Tank Dell, I think we'll see him have a resurgence with Nico being down. So, Juju for me as well. Shades over on YouTube. Jameson Williams, Javonte Williams, Mooney, or Sermon. It's a half-point PPR. Need 1. It's a good one.
My gut instantly went to Jameson, but I've been more than vocal about my bias towards the Dallas-Detroit game and the fact that Dallas just has been struggling defensively. If it's not Jameson, it's Mooney. So it's either one of those 2 wide receivers for me. I would lean Jameson Williams personally. Derek, do you have a Mooney argument that you would like to try and persuade me?
Sure. Let's go ahead and hop into that run, right? So, well, yes, the Jameson Williams matchup is certainly juicy. When I'm looking at this thing, I've got these 2 really kind of back to back in my own rankings. And both of them in wide receiver 2 territory when it's all said and done. I think that both of these guys will have very, very good games when it's all said and done, and will certainly be worth putting in there. But Panthers are allowing the second most points to opposing fantasy teams out there, and they're allowing the 10th most points to opposing wide receivers in fantasy, in half-point PPR there. So the matchup is actually maybe a little bit better there for Darnell Mooney. We've certainly seen the pop weeks come through there. Jameson has had some good pop weeks, but I do think that when it's all said and done, we're going to see a better overall, more targets, more opportunities for Mooney. Again, wouldn't surprise me if we see Darnell Mooney with 8, 9, 10 targets in this one. I think Jameson Williams, we see him probably settle in closer to about that, maybe 5 on a really good week, maybe 6 targets. So that would be why I would lean the Darnell Mooney route. Is one, matchup better? Two, I think the volume will be better. But when it's all said and done, I do have these guys incredibly close to each other in my own rankings.
So my really only counterpoint to that would be I'm really afraid that Atlanta is going to jump out on top of them and then they're just going to run the ball.
Yeah.
Like if their defense is playing halfway well, right? And my biggest fear is that they'll jump up by 17 points and then they're just going to feed Tyler Algier and Bijan. And they're just going to take the air out of the ball because they're not threatened by Carolina's offense, right? There's no style points, especially in divisional games. You're just going to get out of it. So yes, I think playing the Panthers is a great play, and Mooney's been off to a really good start to the season. I'm just deathly afraid that it's going to be 20-3 at halftime, and we're going to get into the second half, and then it's just going to be, we'll move the ball a little bit, but we're going to run, pass. If it works, great. If not, we'll punt and give up a field goal maybe, and then run, pass again for a while and see how it goes.
Fair enough. But either way, Shades, you got the points there on how we look or how we're looking
I like
at
both
that
of
one.
them. Yeah, I do like both of them.
Binkin over on YouTube, steamer, not streamer, and for daily fantasy and primary FanDuel.
I guess if you're looking, I think Zay Flowers could be one of those guys for you. I think Tank Dell could be one of those guys for you with Nico being out. I think those both give you a good option. If you're looking for someone who's a lot cheaper, Darius Slayton, right? You lightning in a bottle again. For Darius, Dontavian Wicks could be that guy. Again, going kind of through that list. Honestly, where else? You could look at Jalen Tolbert. So it just depends on, that when you're talking about that steamer, like how cheap do you want to go? Right? Because we can go through some of these guys and look for that upside. A guy who probably is dirt cheap that we're not really talking about is Jalen Polk from the Patriots. Like if Mac, and not Mac Jones, about went about slipped up on that one. If Drake May, right? Like we did see a connection between Polk and May in the preseason. So if that's carrying over, I think that one's interesting for this week. I think that's about as deep as I would want to go. On the wide receiver side, and then on the running back side, man, I like Tony Pollard's matchup a lot against Indianapolis. They've been giving it up on the ground big time, so I think Tony Pollard has some big time play. If you want the cheaper option, I think that you could Tyrone Tracy, again, another guy. I'm not convinced Devin Singletary is playing. You have Bucky Irving, and then you also have Tajay Spears, another Tennessee running back. So a couple different options for you. Again, just depending on if you want to go mid-ish tier, right, with a Tony Pollard, or if you're going cheaper for running back. So I think any one of those guys is poised to have a really good game this week.
I like it. Very good. Quincy over on YouTube saying they've been trying to trade Ran. Not sure what that means exactly.
Yeah, sorry, Quincy. I'm not sure who Ran is.
Well, let us know and we can expand on that. Mr. Wumbo saying that they live in New England and they're used to boring Bill Belichick interviews or the we're just looking ahead next week game. Yep, on to Cincinnati.
I don't feel bad for Patriots fans. Sorry. Like,
at all.
I don't. You guys had
20 years.
yeah, damn near 2 decades, it felt like, worth of dominance over everybody and everything else. Like, you can suffer like the rest of the NFL for a while now.
Hi Lolly over on Twitch saying got JT, Brees, Rashad, and traded for Gibson due to the injuries. They have a possible trade. JT and Flowers for Achan and Devonta Smith. Thoughts? I don't mind this one on the
I don't mind this one.
surface.
I don't mind this one. I think I'd do it.
Yeah, the only hold up there is if you have any concerns that what Tua's coming back this season looks like. So
I think Tua is coming back, which probably
so do
makes me
I.
like Achan a bit more. Like he's preparing like a guy who's trying to get back for his team right now. So I'm leaning towards the fact that we will see Tua. So I like Achan. Uh-oh. And we lost Derek. We lost the show host. Joke's on him. Now I get to run it by myself. Oh, no, there he is. Okay.
Not real sure what happened there, but all of a sudden. Alrighty. Well, let's see where we were at here. Alrighty.
There you go.
There we go. So Tony saying, evening guys, debating dropping Wicks for Slayton or Tolbert in a PPR league for flex. Thoughts? I've got no problem with either one. Now, full disclosure, I am very bitter about having played Dontavian Wicks this past week and what I got. So you can probably take that with a grain of salt, but yeah, at this point, I don't have a problem dropping him and going either way. I'd probably lean the Tolbert side more than the Slayton side, but I certainly understand either one.
Yeah, I think I want Wicks this week against Arizona.
Fair enough.
I know I've been pumping up this Dallas-Detroit game, but given I think Wicks will have a bounce back. I think he performs better when there's at least 2 other healthy guys, like the off coverage that he sees and being able to move Jaden Reed around and kind of shift coverages and whatnot. Like Wicks, I do like, but they need a true wide receiver 2 in Dallas, and Jalen Tolbert really stepped up for him last week. So I could see Dak rewarding him for his efforts by following that up with another solid performance here for the Cowboys, because they're gonna need points. So I Tolbert by a hair, but if you want to stay with Wicks, I get it. Slayton would probably be a later third in that ranking for me.
The Slayton does feel like it's chasing points for sure. Quincy over on YouTube, start to Moss, Gibson, Bigsby.
This week, I would tell you Gibson and Bigsby this week. Moss has been dealing with the injury. Bigsby, again, leading the NFL in yards per carry right now. We'll see if this is just a flash in the pan, but we've seen Chase Brown get my computer's being so weird. We've seen Chase Brown, excuse me, let me find my font. We've seen Chase Brown get more of the snap share each week as the season's gone along. So I think Zach Moss is more in a 50-50 timeshare. Bigsby's a little bit behind that, but he has much more explosiveness than Zach Moss. And Gibson this week is just a smash play. So I think I'd go Gibson and Bigsby over the pond. Is the 2 that I would lean for this week.
Concur. Yeah, Moss is kind of a distant third for me on this one. I would certainly go with Gibson. I'd go with Bigsby. I think both of those guys are going to be back end RB2, top end RB3. Whereas I think with Zach Moss, you're probably looking back end RB3, top end RB4 type of finish here. So I've got those guys in very different tiers this week. Alrighty, Victor over on YouTube. James Cook for Mooney and Terry. They've got Drake London dealing with CMC. LOL. If you're, are you getting the James Cook side or the Mooney Terry side? That's kind of my question there. Any thoughts on this one?
Is it, I guess I don't know if I'm reading it correctly. Is it both or either or? Because if it's either or and you already have Drake London, then giving up Mooney to get James Cook is the play.
Right.
If it's both, it's an overpay.
Yeah, I'd concur. Hey, he's getting James Cook. So, Victor, let us know, is it either Mooney or Terry, or is it Mooney and Terry that this deal is comprised of? So let us know on that one while we wait. Tony over on YouTube saying also need an RB2, have Bigsby, Allen holding on to Brooks, but need a win. 1 and 4. Algier, Sermon, and Tracy available. Which PPR running back do you like the best?
Bigsby and Allen are your top two? Am I reading this right?
Yeah,
That's just options for RB2.
I think that's the option.
So Tracy is the option for this week if you don't get Devin Singletary. The problem with that game is it's the Sunday night game. So you gotta wait. Unless you're in a sleeper app and they allow you to. No, none of those guys have an injury designation, so they're not gonna let you do that anyway.
And even
I
if
think it's
Singletary
Tracy.
goes, and yeah,
I think it's Tracy here, honestly. Bigsby would be my number 2. Tracy 1, Bigsby 2.
there we go. Alrighty, and then Binkin over on YouTube. If Washington pushes back, you could see Justice Hill hitting pay dirt. Yeah, potentially.
It's possible, but that means they're not going to give the ball to Derrick Henry on the goal line, and I don't see that happening.
Chaka over on YouTube. Hey,
I see what you're saying. Another big one.
Oh, got it. Chaka over on YouTube asking, start 2 wide receivers out of DJ Moore, Higgins, Devontae Smith, Brian Thomas Jr., Deontay. Would you trade for Neighbors? PPR redraft. Yes, I would try and trade for Malik Neighbors. And out of the starting those 2, what thoughts you got?
Christmas. I think DJ Moore is the must start for me this week against Jacksonville. After DJ Moore, I think I'd lean Higgins personally, but I could see where Devonta Smith might be the more enticing option. Out of these, it's definitely not Brian Thomas Jr. for me.
Or Deontay.
I could see them just force feeding him targets if they're down. That's where you'd get it from Deontay. It's just straight PPR points. I could see him with another 12, 13 targets, just trying to pepper him with balls.
Yeah. And
I see a world where that happens is all I'm saying. But for game flow, DJ Moore for sure. I would go Higgins then Smith, only because I think now that the band's back together, I think it's going to make life a lot easier for Saquon. So you may not actually see Jalen Hurts do as much.
And actually, he said, which of the 2 wide receivers would you trade out of the ones that he listed for Neighbors? Okay.
Higgins and Smith. See if you can keep DJ Moore around.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd probably throw out Higgins, either Higgins or Smith and Deontay, right? Like I'd probably go that route, and then if I have to work my way up from there. But yeah, I'd probably throw out the Higgins and Deontay, or the Devonta Smith and Deontay for Neighbors, and see if I could get a deal done that way. Alrighty, and then Mr. Wumbo saying that they'd like to see the analytics for the word Wicks from Twitter and see how much it spiked during his dud game. Not just that game, but the entire week was. I don't know that there wasn't a day that Wicks wasn't trending throughout the fantasy community on that one. And Victor saying Mooney and Terry would be going on that deal, but he picked up Mooney off the waiver wire, so they see it as Terry for James because they got London, no RB.
Such a big
overpay. Yeah.
If I'm giving up Mooney and Terry, I'm trying. I guess I'd like to see if I got something a little higher than James Cook, even though Cook has played respectably well here this season. Man, if you're good with it, go get your guy, right? Ultimately, right? If you're good with it, go get your guy in James Cook. I think it's a little too much for James Cook based off of what Terry and Mooney have done here the past couple weeks. I could see one or the other and maybe a lesser piece. But again, it's if you're good with it, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I was trying to think on who else I might try and go get. Like, I don't know, maybe I might see about trying to get like a Kyron Williams, maybe seeing if I could try and pull something like that.
Yeah, or just one of those two for Tony Pollard.
Yeah, something like that.
Like Mooney straight up for Tony Pollard.
So, alrighty, and then Frank over on YouTube that they have Ayuk, Zay, Reed, Olave, Pickens, Xavier, Puka. Do I drop any of them for Juju? Was leaning to Pickens.
If you want Juju, I'd be Zay Flowers, Olave, Xavier Worthy. No, you don't want 2 Chiefs wide receivers on your team.
Right.
No, I don't think I'd do this. I think Zay Flowers is going to he has the schedule to have a really good back half of the year. I think I'd hold on to this. Juju's not going to be any better than George Pickens and far less consistent. In my opinion.
I think I'd agree. Yeah, I'm not picking up Juju on that one. Plus, I don't know that I'd play Juju over any of those guys outside of absolutely needing to do it due to a waiver or a bye week or something like that, right? Wouldn't play him over Ayuk, wouldn't play him over Flowers, Reed, Olave, or Pickens any of those weeks. And so this is a league where you're start 3 wide receivers
3 and 2 flex,
or start 3 and 3 flex is what it would really have to be. Like, I might play Juju over Xavier Worthy, depending upon the matchup. But yeah,
I'd do it.
I'm not picking up Juju just to have another piece on my bench that's not going to start. Whereas Pickens, I might actually start. Victor over on YouTube saying that they have Jefferson on bye and Neighbors is out. That is rough. Starting Brian Thomas Jr. They also have Christian Kirk or Keenan Allen. Full point PPR. Also Caleb or Goff. 6-point passing league. Thanks, guys. I don't want to start 2 Jaguars wide receivers. Much as I don't want to start Keenan Allen, I don't want to start 2 of the guys from the same team.
Yeah, I definitely spread out my risk. And so to do that, you're starting Keenan Allen, and to spread out your risk, you're also starting Jared Goff.
Yep. Yeah, I concur on that one. Any again, guys, if you have any other or any additional thoughts, questions, concerns, comments, throw them in the chat. Let's go ahead and rock and roll that. And then if y'all can do us a favor, head over to the wherever you're viewing this at, whether you're on Twitch or Instagram or YouTube or any of the places, Facebook, wherever you're watching this, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, that follow button, all those good things, and help out the independent podcasts. Do appreciate everybody tuning in and chiming in there. So the I don't know, what do you think? We got some time to roll through some of these games, or are we about ready to call it?
I'm good with whatever. I mean, we could pick 1 or 2 of the games. I don't know that all are necessarily worthy, but we can definitely pick 1 or 2.
All right, I've got one queued up here. We'll just roll with that one, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this game here. We got Detroit, we got Dallas. Detroit favored by 3. The over under on this one, 52.5. Thoughts on this game?
I love it. Man, I'm gonna take Detroit. Dallas has to show me they can step up and win a game this year. Yes, the Steelers, but the Steelers offense is abysmal. The Lions is not like that. So, Brand is back as far as secondary help for the Cowboys. So I do think that is something that can assist them a little bit. But I like the over in this game. I'm rooting for points big time. I'm starting all my fantasy, all fantasy relevant performers. I'm trying to get in for this game. I'm going to take the Lions to cover. A push wouldn't surprise me though. And then, man, if there's going to be an underperformer in this game, I would tell you it's going to be Sam Laporta.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the overperformer could be it's probably Turbin.
Okay, I like it.
For the
yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Just kind of leaning on the push, but on when I'm leaning pushes though, I do tend to favor the home team there to just sneak inside that. I do think that we're going to see plenty of points. This one has a feel that like we can see a lot of back and forth and give and go and up and down and just lots of fantasy points and actual NFL points there. I do think that we're going to see some. There's not really too many key injuries from a fantasy perspective in this game. But one of the props that I really liked was Jameson Williams to go over his 43.5 receiving yards on this one. This is a name that's come up all night, Jameson Williams or this guy. And Jameson Williams, in a lot of cases, is a start in this one, certainly worthy of flex consideration this week. And a guy that I think is going to have a fantasy, the potential to overperform his fantasy projections here is Jalen Tolbert. I think that this could be a very good game here. I think Jake Ferguson, like I said, he's certainly rated well, but I think that we have the ability to see him finish as tight end number 2 overall this week. So I think there's some really good things that are able to kind of rock and roll from there. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm seeing this one. Any other thoughts on this one?
I'm looking forward to this one. I really am. I think this will be a great game.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go ahead and we'll take a look at one more, and if there aren't any other questions that are coming in, we'll call it a day here. let's go ahead and take a look at this matchup here. We've got Washington and Baltimore. Baltimore's favored by 6.5. The over-under is 51.5. Thoughts on this one?
Here's another game that I like the over. I think this is going to be kind of an interesting test for Jaden Daniels, right? We've seen Baltimore shut down some pretty good quarterbacks in Dak and Josh Allen, but I feel like media buzz probably propped up the Bills and the Cowboys a bit more. I could see the Commanders kind of getting in maybe a little bit under the radar. Um, and so I think this game finds a way to the over, which is super exciting. So I like Jaden Daniels in some formats, right? Obviously, in a 2 quarterback league, you're starting him. Single quarterback league, he's played so well, you really don't want to miss out if he's going to show out against Lamar Jackson, right? You could see some back and forth with the two of them, which I find super interesting. Terry McLaurin is starting to come along here pretty well. Found the end zone last week, I believe. And then Zay Flowers is another guy who's consistently kind of picking up his usage on top of the Derrick Henry, right? Beast mode is just he's just so good. He's so fun to watch. He's such a big bodied back who has speed on top of everything else. So um I think I think for me there's nothing about this game again that I don't like. Um I wonder if Washington's going to be keeping up just because of a lack of running game. Brian Thomas Jr. is questionable, so we'll see what happens there. But I do think that leads to Austin Eckler being able to get a lot of catches out of the backfield, possibly to try and keep the Baltimore pass rush away from Jaden Daniels.
Right. Well, and this is one too that right with that Brian Robinson game time decision, like that it will certainly impact this thing for sure. But I do like this one here should be a lot of fun too, from the standpoint that we've got quarterback 1, quarterback 2 in fantasy points so far in the season squaring off here in this matchup, and 2 guys that are mobile type of quarterbacks. They've certainly been able to do some things with the arm this year as well. So I do think that we see some really kind of fun things out of this one, and Baltimore certainly has not been that defensive unit that we've seen over the last few years, right? They've been much more willing to allow a lot of other teams to put up points, and Washington same way, right? So I do think that this becomes down to, you know, this is going to remind me of. I think this one may remind me of Big 12 football from about 4 or 5 years ago, where it's if you make a defensive stop in the game, you probably are going to win. Like we could see this one just become a track meet, and I think this will be a lot of fun to when it's all said and done. One of the props that I really liked was Zach Ertz to go over his 27.5 receiving yards. Any other thoughts on this one?
No.
All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and we'll hit up the chat. I saw a couple more your questions, comments come in there, and so we'll hit those ones up and we'll start calling it a night here. Frank over on YouTube saying that they have Tucker and Sam. Who do they start?
Who? I am going Sam Laporta by the slimmest of margins. Again, going back to the point total, going back to the fact that I think this is going to be a super high scoring back and forth affair. I'm going to lean Sam Laporta. Now, Tucker Kraft has been on a heater. Luke Musgrave just got put on IR, so he's got really no competition behind him at the moment. So I am not opposed if you want to pivot. The two of them are side by side, basically, in consensus rankings. So they're saying flip a coin. I'm not arguing with that at all. I don't think you're going to go wrong either way, even though I just got done saying Laporta was going to be the underperformer of that game. I still think he's going to put up enough points to be, he'll put up 10, 11 points in a PPR league, right? I just don't think he's going to blow up.
Right. I mean, there's a lot to that, right? Like I I want to say Laporta, kind of off the cuff, and kind of lean that way. But you're right. Tucker Kraft has been just really good lately, and I think I'd actually probably ride the hot hand in this one a little bit more. Um, so yeah, one of those that we've seen him put up really good performances last couple of weeks, come down with touchdowns into this one. So some of this is going to depend upon who you think is going to come down with the touchdown. I think that we see Tucker Kraft probably come down with the touchdown. I don't think that we see Sam Laporte quite get there. Frank saying that they also dropped Anthony Richardson for Caleb, but this week everyone's saying AR over Caleb. Does he go back to AR?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I think part of the AR fascination is what he can do with his legs, but if he's dealing with an oblique injury and he's just good enough to play, I don't know. Caleb Williams has been coming along again. He's absolutely been looking like the first overall pick, like we wanted him to here the last couple weeks. First trip to London is always kind of scary, and how it can kind of bog you down and jet lag you a little bit. But I think overall, I like his ability to throw the football a bit more. I like his weapons a little bit more, and I like the matchup a little bit more. So for me, I'm going to tell you it's Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I like the matchup a lot more going up against Jacksonville than going up against Tennessee. Again, right, this is one of those that I want to see Anthony Richardson start completing passes better than 50% and be able to hit receivers in target, in stride, make the and actually make the throws out there instead of just the fantasy production really coming on one or two deep shots and some legs coming into play there, right? So I certainly can understand the intrigue around Anthony Richardson, but I don't know that I'd play him this week, right? And there's a lot of leagues that where I have Anthony Richardson, I'm pivoting and I'm going other directions on that one. So yeah, I would still lean Caleb Williams at this point. Terrence over on YouTube saying starting Antonio Gibson this week. So should I trade Purdy and Javonte Williams for Mahomes? I'd roster Burrow and Mahomes. I wouldn't trade. No.
No, it's a headache that you're not going to want week in and week out.
Right.
Like, well, you're trying to trade Purdy and Javonte. I'm looking for like a high end running back or wide receiver. Is what I'm looking for.
Right.
You don't in single quarterback leagues. You don't need Burrow and Mahomes at all.
And quite frankly, I'd rather have Burrow than Mahomes.
At least right now.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those that this is going to seem very hot takey, but the fantasy community needs to understand Patrick Mahomes not really a top 10 quarterback when it comes to fantasy. Right? For fantasy alone, the points just aren't there week in, week out for him to be the top 5 quarterback that he was drafted at, much less at this point be a top 10 QB, right? Like it's just not there, right? And we started seeing that trend last year where there was a take the name off of it and start looking at just the stats and the fantasy performances. And, Patrick Mahomes was in the conversation with a lot of quarterbacks that you wouldn't have expected. For a lot of season, Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes were very much in that same statistical group out there. And one of those guys got run out of town on his team. The other one didn't. So, there is very much some of those that, at this point in the season, Sam Darnold, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, all of those guys are out producing Patrick Mahomes when it comes to fantasy production. So, yeah, I think I've kind of said my piece on that one. I'd rather have Purdy and Javonte at that point. Terrence asking over on YouTube, should I go after Nico Collins? His owner has rosters Puka as well.
Sure. I don't think that's a bad thing. See what they need. But if you can give it up and grab Nico, you're going to sit on him for the next 3 weeks or so, right? With nursing the hamstring and being on IR, really 4 weeks. This would be week 1. So you're going to sit on him for 4 weeks, but when he comes back, it's going to be nice to have him for weeks 10 through whenever your season's finished.
Yep, I would agree. All righty. Well, that's going to take us down here to the end of the questions, comments here. Let's go ahead and we'll start wrapping it up here. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, a lot of good questions tonight, right? So we appreciate the participation and all the questions. So, if you guys get a chance and you haven't done so already, please go over to our YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. You guys will get notifications every time we go live on Tuesday nights and on Friday nights here, at 11 o'clock Eastern. Yeah, 11 o'clock Eastern. So, again, we appreciate it. Thank you all very much. Continue to send everything our way at Good Old Boys FF. We will respond just as quick as we can and help provide some insight and assist in maybe a direction or start sit waiver wire, whatever you're looking for here for your fantasy rosters.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's going to do it for us tonight. Like Kevin said, head on over to the YouTube, hit that subscribe, hit that like button, hit the follow button wherever you're watching this or listening to this or viewing this. Appreciate everybody tuning in the comments and the chat. It's always a ton of fun when we've got the comments and getting to cut it up with y'all and do appreciate everybody tuning in there. But that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.